I'm proud of you for keeping it. You didn't have to.
How best to sum up this movie? Cthulhu meets It Follows. So we are talking about the movie Gremlin, which is also known as Gremlin's Curse. Now this will be released in October of 2017 in the US under the title Gremlin, and then in early 2018 under the title Gremlin's Curse in the UK. Directed and co-written by Ryan Bellgardt. It tells the story of this strange box, and inside this box there seems to be some type of demonic creature or a gremlin. Now, the conceit here is you have to give this box to someone that you love before this timer runs out. Otherwise, we assume bad things are going to happen. Now, obviously, when you give this box to someone, you essentially committing them to certain death with this creature, which is primed to come out and attack them at some point. So it really becomes this case of having to kind of, push this curse onto someone else, and the conceit here is you have to love them. So we've seen this kind of thing before, like I've mentioned, in It Follows, which is kind of a similar kind of setup, Curse of the Demon, and actually a number of other movies as well. So the concept here is not entirely new. But it's actually quite a fun little kind of creature feature that goes into some very dark places. So let's discuss a little further. So we'll talk about the positives first of all. The first thing for me is this movie actually harkens back to the days of the kind of like the more family-friendly kind of horror films that we had, like The Gate and Monster Squad. I mean, it isn't quite as kind of as goofy as those movies, but I couldn't help but feel, we have this kind of family with everyone from the kind of the great grandmother right down to the kind of like the 10-year-old boy having to deal with this kind of monster problem. So it did remind me of those kind of old films where we have all these kind of kids involved and they're trying to kind of get rid of the monster and stuff like that, and it's a kind of a family affair. So it does definitely have that kind of sense of fun that you would have maybe watched in these kind of in the films. I've got to say, I kind of quite like the creature here. The creature design is actually pretty good. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of an H.p. Lovecraft inspired nightmare. It's pretty interesting design, and obviously this thing gets progressively more dangerous as the movie goes on. And I've got to say, some of the characters are kind of quite fun. I actually quite like the teenage daughter and her boyfriend, even though they don't have loads of screen time. I thought they were actually quite fun and had some interesting kind of like conversations about topics that we may be seeing before. And I kind of like the police detective as well was also quite fun. There's some fun, interesting characters here. And as I've mentioned, this movie actually goes quite dark. In fact, it'll almost elicit some Game of Thrones inspired shocks. That's all I'll say. But it goes in some pretty dark places that I wasn't expecting it to. So let's talk about some of the negatives here. The biggest one for me is actually the writing. The writing here is a little eye-rolling at times. When I say a little eye-rolling, I actually mean quite a lot. So what do I mean? So we'll talk about the first death that happens in the movie. Actually, it's not the first death. It's the first death in this kind of immediate family. We have a death in the prologue, but anyway, someone gets killed, as you're probably going to expect in a horror film, and this creature has caused a stab wound in this person's chest. I won't say who. And everyone just kind of shrugged it off. Oh, well, someone's died in this kind of house. The police just seem to kind of like let everyone go without really, holding them in or questioning them too much. And the family that lived there, or remaining family, just seem very nonchalant about it. The fact that this person has got a stab wound in their chest. Like, clearly something's gone on. It really bothered me, I've got to say. But that's not all. When we get our second victim, their response is to kind of like try and hide it from the police. But there's no logical reason why you would do that. Even if obviously the creature is maybe somewhat unbelievable, I still feel it's just a case of saying the answer is in there, get into it if you can. Doesn't make sense to me. So we have, as the film progresses, we have all these kind of like little inconsistencies, very unrealistic situations that happen throughout the movie that we will find very, very frustrating. The acting also from some of the characters is a little bit kind of like wooden at times. It's not terrible, but there are certain characters who I won't kind of point out that just seem a little bit on the kind of like the not quite as good as we wanted to see sometimes. The actual creature effects itself, although I actually quite like the design, is clearly just a CGI creature that does look like a CGI creature sometimes. It's actually on screen quite a lot, and maybe the effects budget couldn't quite make it look particularly realistic, although like I said, it's not so bad really, but nonetheless it still kind of just looks like a kind of CGI beastie running around sometimes. And as I've mentioned, you'll kind of think back to these kind of like horror films where we have this monster that this family's trying to get rid of, and you'll kind of wish that it was a practical effect in times, because it just kind of doesn't kind of pull you in quite as much. Overall, though, I've got to say, it still was a fun creature feature. I thought the design was very unique. I thought the story, although it's something we have seen a couple of times before, nonetheless, it was still actually quite a fun movie, and interesting things happen. Not always what you'd expect as well. So overall, I'll give this movie a good 6 out of 10, a slightly above average horror movie for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.